Hello and welcome to the A2 Religious Studies study session on the Philosophy of Religion module. Today we're going to concentrate on Sigmund Freud and his beliefs or views on the religious mind. So our aims for this session is to reinforce your understanding of his view of the religious mind. So let's have a quick look at the specification and see what the examining board is expecting of you to understand what Sigmund Freud has actually said about the religious mind. So first of all, you need to be able to see that he does believe that a religious belief is a product of the human mind. He saw that religion was an illusion and not a reality in the outside world. And he also thought that it was the consequence of a neurosis, a collective neurosis that people have. You also need to understand the primal horde theory, the Oedipus complex, the wish fulfillment, and the reaction against helplessness in life. Then we need to have a brief look at the supportive evidence, including reference to redirection of guilt complexes, reference to instinctive desires deriving from evolutionary basis based on Charles Darwin, and then we have to look at the challenges to his theory. The lack of anthropological evidence for primal horde, no firm psychological evidence for the Oedipus complex, and that his evidence basis was too narrow. So we'll have a quick look. We have a lot that we need to go through in the next 40 minutes or so. So whilst we are looking at the specification, I will draw your attention to the three possible evaluation questions that derive from this part of the course. How far religious belief can be considered to be a neurosis? You would obviously include some of Freud in that question. The adequacy of Freud's explanation of religious belief. And the third one, to the extent to which Jung was more positive than Freud about the idea of God. I don't think that we will have time to go into detail and address these evaluations in this evaluation, as there is a lot of content to actually try and explain what Freud thought of the religious mind. So we'll start. So we have to go over some background information. First of all, who was Sigmund Freud? You can see his dates there, 1858 to 1939. He was an Austrian psychologist, and he is considered to be one of the founders of psychology. He was really interested in the religious mind, and he was from a Jewish family himself. But he was an atheist. He did not have any religious beliefs. And he had an interest in trying to find out why human beings felt the need to be religious. So here is a summary of his ideas on religion. So this could be a list for you for an A question, asking for you to explain his beliefs, his views on the religious mind. You could use these as pointers to actually try and plan an essay answer. So the idea that religion is an illusion and not reality, it's what we call as reductive. It's the human mind that has created God. He's not a reality in the outside world. He saw that the religious mind was infantile. It was a childish way of looking or coping with life. It was nothing more than a wish list, a childish wish list. He saw that religious rituals were obsessional, and he thought that it was a result of a neurosis, an imbalanced mind. And he also said that the religious mind was a result of the Oedipus complex, what he called the Oedipus complex, which you may have heard of. That religion and God is a projection of fears and guilt that we feel of taboo memories in our unconscious mind, the id. And he did seek some historical evidence to his idea of the Oedipus complex, trying to trace it back to the early tribes in his book Totem and Taboo, and his scientific evidence, trying to get some scientific clout behind his theory, trying to look at the primal horde theory from Charles Darwin. So we'll go through this in this presentation and just give you an overview of each point. So as I mentioned, he had huge interest in the religious mind. These are some of his books on religion. I will be referring to some of them, and if you have an interest in this topic or need to do some further reading, I can recommend this book, Freud and Jung on Religion by Michael Palmer. You obviously need to know about Freud and Jung in your A-level course. So if you have not studied psychology before, I think we need to look at some background information that will help you to understand where Freud was coming from and his views on the religious mind. So the human mind is also known as the psyche. The background you need to know that according to Freud, there were three parts to the human mind. What we call the unconscious mind is known as the id. You have also got the ego, and we also have the superego. So we'll have a look at the three parts of the human psyche according to Freud. So the id, the unconscious mind. The id is the unconscious part of the human mind. This is where it's full of desires and aspirations that drive people. For example, the desire for pleasure and sexual desire, the libido, the sexual appetite. This is a part that other people don't see, ideas that society would not accept. We would call them taboo ideas that can be seen in the id. The id can be seen as very antisocial, and it's important that you understand that this is the part that creates the religious mind according to Freud. Then we have the ego. The ego is a conscious part of the mind. It deals with reality, being aware of our physical form in society. It is the ego that creates our personality. This is what people in society see in the outside world of us. The ego tries to keep the id under control. As you can see from Michael Palmer there, the main aim of the id is pleasure, and the main aim of the ego is safety. So it tries to restrict the id so that it doesn't appear in day-to-day life. And then on the other side of the range of the human mind, you have the superego, and this is linked to an individual's attitudes towards their parents, towards society and culture. The superego is the opposite of the id. Whilst the id can be seen as quite primitive and animalistic and selfish, that really wanting pleasure in whichever way for the individual, the superego tries to behave perfectly, has a strong conscience about everything and tries to appear perfect and good. The values and norms of behavior are reflected from our parents and culture and education influence on the id. So the id, the ego, and the superego, they fight against each other. And this can cause psychological confusion, a kind of a disorder, a neurosis. The ego tries to prevent the id from appearing in the outside world. The superego tries to work with the id and the ego by trying to set standards that have been taught by parents and society and education. So those are the three parts of the human mind. You need just to make sure that you understand that this is where the religious mind comes from. So as we mentioned in the first couple of slides, religion is an illusion. According to Freud, he grew up in a Jewish family, but he was a non-believer himself. He was an atheist. He rejected the idea of a God completely. For Freud, religion was only existed in the mind. So this is what we call being reductive. So religion is a product of the human mind. It causes people to perform meaningless religious rituals which have no basis in reality. They are pointless. So for him, religion was not an eternal reality. He saw that religion was an illusion, a product of the human mind alone. God is not an external reality. So not only did he think that religion was an illusion, he also thought that religious believers, their minds were childish or infantile or immature. So obviously, when growing up, we are supposed to mature in our minds and in our behavior and become more independent. Now, then some people cannot deal with this reality. They can't deal with the harsh things that worry us in life. We are unable to deal with cruel life. And as we can't turn to our parents when we grow up, we need something to comfort us and to help us in life. And that is where the idea of God comes into the religious mind, looking for someone to look after us in this cruel world. So Freud saw that religion did meet the psychological needs of humans in two ways. The first way was addressing the threats of the natural world. So it was a way of dealing, when you think of the natural threats, things like tsunamis and earthquakes, we are totally powerless when it comes to facing natural threats like these. So we create a God who can rule over the natural world. The threat of the force of nature is so powerful and terrifying, we must create a powerful God to control it. A way of controlling human instinct or desire or lust is the second way it meets our psychological needs, especially sexual instinct, libido, and the aggressive instinct to kill, which Freud claims that we all have, and it's part of the id, the unconscious mind. So religion has a set of rules that govern these instincts. They keep them under control. So if you have a look at the table below, and if you can press the pause button and just try and think of rules or teachings within religion that actually try and restrict and govern and keep control over sexual desire. And if you can do the same again with murder. So press the pause button and think of things that religions would say about these instincts, human instincts. Okay, so as regards to controlling sexual desire. You may think of religious attitudes to sex before marriage, same-sex marriages. Um, in the Old Testament, in Leviticus, there is a whole chapter looking at what is seen as ethical and what is immoral when it comes to sexual behavior. So these are passed on through religions as a way of trying to restrict and govern and keep sexual desires under control. And the same with murder. The main teaching obviously is in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill. And within Christianity, looking at loving your neighbor, loving one another, showing love and compassion towards others. It's the total opposite of the instinct to be aggressive and to kill. So there you can see that the way that Freud saw that religion met psychological needs of human beings. So because of these threats, what do people do? They create a super parent. They create a new parent that is more powerful than our original parents, a parent that could actually control everything, and that being God. So think about it. We even call within Christianity, you call God our Father in heaven in the Lord's Prayer. And if you think about the beliefs about God, you will see that some characteristics do actually match to the responsibilities of a parent. If you pause the presentation now and think what characteristics and responsibilities are shared between a parent and God. You may have come up with some of these points. Both are there to comfort us, to look after us, to punish us when we do things wrong and to teach us right from wrong, to help us in any way in our lives, to give us security, to make us feel secure in life, and to protect us. So you can see the idea of Freud saying that the religious mind was a childish mind. It was like a mind of a child wishing that a new all-powerful parent would be there to look after us in life. Again, he added to the religious mind being a childish way of thinking, he added two things to his view. First one, that the religious mind was nothing more than a wish list. It's like before Christmas, when you were a child, you'd maybe create a wish list of things that you wanted, or a wish list would be wanting to have friends, wanting to have a good life, wanting to be safe, wanted to be healthy, wanting to look after all your friends and family. This is just a wish list. There's no guarantee here, but this is just like a child trying to believe in a God and giving him a list of things for him to look after in our lives. And then he's also referred to the religious mind and religion being nothing more than a safety blanket. Maybe you had a safety blanket when you were younger. So a safety blanket obviously makes a baby or a child feels safe. It's always there by their side, making them feel comforted. Well, obviously, he saw that religion and the idea of God was nothing more than that, a barrier from the harsh realities of life and something that we grasp to make us feel safe. He also thought that the religious mind was a result of what's called as the oceanic feeling, a strong mystical feeling. You come across the idea of mystical experiences in your AES course, I'm sure. So a strong feeling, a mystical feeling that religious people get of trying to be one with God, of uniting with God. So this is known as the oceanic feeling. It's the result of a common feeling that everybody feels, according to Freud. Because of our fears in life, people want to feel safe, and everybody remembers the security that they felt in the mother's womb. So they are desperate for that security and trying to unite with something to make us feel safe. So because that we have grown up, people therefore turn towards God, towards an all-powerful being, and trying to unite with God in life. So that's known as an oceanic feeling. In order to understand why Freud thought that the religious mind was a result of neurosis, you need to understand a bit about the development of the human mind according to Freud. So it took 18 years for the human mind to mature, and these fell within 5 stages. The first stage is the oral stage, happens within the first 18 months. The mouth is the main source of pleasure for the child. Child is looking for safety and pleasure. Think about things like sucking a baby, sucking his thumb, or a dummy. The id is really strong. It fulfills a selfish desire. The second stage is the anal stage, between 2 and 4 years old, where the anus is the main source of pleasure. The baby begins to learn control over his body and his needs. This is when a baby understands that he cannot have his desires, and the ego is beginning to develop, trying to restrict the feelings of the id. So think about things like potty training, where a baby needs to start curbing his behavior. The most important bit for you to understand within this topic is the third stage, the phallic stage. It does make for some uncomfortable reading, but this is what Freud believed. So obviously in the phallic stage, between the age of 4 and 7, this is when an individual would consider sex in an immature way. And according to Freud, a young boy longs for sexual relationships with his mother, but this is not possible because of the father. The boy fears that the father will castrate him after finding out, and therefore wishes to kill the father. So these are two taboos that you can see here, having a sexual relationship with his mother and wishing to kill his father. This idea is too painful, and so the boy tries to identify with the father. By doing this, the boy internalizes the father's values, and the super ego, the conscience, develops. This is a period most likely to be most concerned with religion, curbing, trying to restrict feelings, taboos of unacceptable practices by society. So this is what causes or can cause the human mind, according to Freud. We'll come back to that in a later stage. The last two stages are not really important for this part of the course. So why is religion seen as neurosis? We need to see or understand the three ideas of regression, repression, and projection. So regression is where the mind goes back. It goes back in time to a childish stage, to one of the 5 stages of the personality development that we've just mentioned. So it's a psychological memory from the past. Think of it, when you regress, you go back. So according to Freud, our mind goes back and remembers some of the stages of the development of our human mind. That causes, for some people, repression, stopping an anti or blocking an antisocial unconscious thought or memory from manifesting themselves in our personality in the outside world. So this would be blocking the memories that they had in the phallic stage of the attraction towards a boy, towards his mother, and the feeling of hatred towards his father and wanting to kill them. So blocking that idea or that memory is what we call repression. And a repression does or can result in a neurosis. Projection is that any unpleasant or antisocial memory that is in the unconscious mind is displayed in the outside world through different actions, doing or saying something. This is where religious rituals come from. It's a projection of what's going on in the unconscious mind. Religion is the outgrowth of sexual desire, guilt, and fear in the unconscious mind. According to Freud, religion is the rejection of the contents of the id. Religious people reject the memory of the id within the phallic phase and try to disprove that religion is an emission of this. So thought repression is a process where the mind stops a memory feeling of any unpleasant event in the past from passing from the unconscious mind to the conscious mind. So blocking traumatic memories, bad thoughts. Thought suppression or repression protects the conscious mind from having to deal with the event or emotions in the past. Repression is like a kind of a bouncer at the door of the conscious mind that keeps unpleasant thoughts from the past away. So here is quite a simplistic diagram trying to explain the idea of repression. This is us and how we try to behave and look out in real life. Obviously, there's a process of regression where we go back to one of the stages in the development of the human mind. We get to the phallic stage. We have a traumatic memory of the attraction towards our mother. So obviously we try, like the bouncer here, we try and block that memory so that it doesn't come through to the conscious mind. That blocking here can cause an unbalanced mind, an unhealthy mind, a neurosis. So this idea of the child being attracted to one parent and feeling hatred towards the other is what's known as the Oedipus complex. So this is the basis of Freud's theory of religion, of the religious mind, the Oedipus complex, which is named after the Greek legend about the king Oedipus who killed his father and married his mother. Everyone suffers from this according to Freud. So some research work for you, just read the Greek mythology of Oedipus. You don't need to memorize it, but that you can see the Oedipus complex that can be seen within that the myth itself and the complex that Freud claimed that everybody suffered from is named after Oedipus. So we can see what has been repressed, the memory of what Freud called the Oedipus complex, and for some people that was so devastating that they would repress that memory. So repression can cause a neurosis, and one type of neurosis is an obsessive neurosis. And Freud did see similarities between his patients who suffered from OCD and religious people when he observed religious people. So if you pause the button now and just try and list some psychological obsessive acts or habits that could be seen from anybody who would suffer from OCD. So you may have thought of some of these actions, trying to organize things in particular ways, trying to touch objects a certain amount of times, checking things several times, obsessive hygiene or washing, and different superstitions, having to do things or not do things in certain places within life. So these would be seen as obsessive neurosis. So when he observed religious people, he thought that some of the religious practices could be seen as being obsessive. Can you think of some religious rituals that could be seen as obsessive? Pause the button now and try and list some. You may have thought of things like washing or cleansing before prayer or doing some religious ritual. Going to somewhere once in a lifetime, somewhere like the Hajj, an obligation to pray at a certain amount of times or in a certain place or in certain ways, having to fast during parts of the year like Ramadan or in Lent, ritual killing of an animal, killing an animal in a certain way, renouncing items, giving everything away, the idea of celibacy, wearing specific clothings or garments like the 5Ks in Sikhism, or not mixing meat and milk products. So these and many others could be seen by Freud as obsessive religious practices. So you now hopefully understand how Freud saw the religious mind as a result of repression causing a neurosis, an obsessional neurosis, which could be seen in different rituals within religion. He now goes on to try and get some historical evidence for what he called the Oedipus complex that we all had, that we had a memory of an attraction towards a parent and a hatred towards the other. And to do that, he goes back into primitive society and looks at how he thought tribes used to live. And this can be seen in his book, Totem and Taboo. So obviously a taboo is an antisocial behavior. So obviously sexual attraction within the family and hatred and wanting to kill a parent would be seen as a taboo. And a totem is one of these, if you're not familiar with them. It's a piece of wood with an animal on top, and they were popular within primitive tribes and are still popular with some groups of people. So this is where he was seeking some historical clout or evidence for the existence of the Oedipus complex. So Totem and Taboo is a collection of 4 essays focused on his study of primitive society. And in this, he tries to get some evidence for the Oedipus complex. So he studied how primitive society worked before more sophisticated societies developed. Do you remember when you evaluate Freud at the beginning in the introduction of the Totem and Taboo, there was little understanding of primitive societies, and therefore Freud says that he has no concrete basis or evidence for what he had written in the book. So Freud sees how religion appears in the life patterns of early tribes. According to Freud, primitive people had a special totem, a pole, in the shape of an animal, and they would have to deep respect for the totem, and they would also feel fear for the symbol at the top of the totem, which was usually an animal. The members of the tribe would share the totem and define their own social rules according to the requirements of the totem, doing what the totem wanted them to do. They would perform rituals around the totem, and these would be seen as the early religious practices by Freud. Freud discovered two customs that related to the totem within the tribes. First of all, the animal at, that was at the top of the totem should not be hunted, killed, or eaten, but an annual feast would be held, which would include rituals where the animal at the top of the totem would be killed and eaten in the hope of trying to unite with that animal. So where did the totem come from? So Freud's theory was that the tribes were organized by a patriarch, a man who ruled over the tribe. The patriarch would have power over everyone and everything, sexual rules and taboo subjects. Each tribe would need to have strict rules about gender to ensure a correct relationship was upheld between members of the tribe. These rules were the basis of our culture today, according to Freud. The patriarch would forbid the young men from having sex with the women in their own tribe and would keep all the women to himself. The young men would come together because of their sexual desire and rebel and kill the patriarch in order to fulfill their sexual desires within the tribe. Afterwards, they would feel guilty for killing the patriarch and need something to replace the patriarch. They would form a totem out of wood which would take his place and give it divine or supernatural powers. They would choose an animal on the top of the totem to represent the patriarch. They would forbid hunting the animal in order to respect it, but at one time of the year, they would kill the animal and eat it in a feast to try and become one with the animal, which is the patriarch. So because of their guilt. Can you think of something similar within Christianity, a Christian practice where they try to become one with God? That's it. Communion. So communion is where they eat the bread and drink the blood of Christ to become one with God. So Freud could see similarities between these practices. So he was trying to get some historical backing or evidence for the Oedipus complex. So he saw similarities here with the Oedipus complex and the way in which the tribes lived. The men's desire for the women within the tribe was like the child's desire for his mother, and the aspiration to kill the father was the same as killing the patriarch. So this, Freud believed, was evidence for the primitive tribes displaying the Oedipus complex. So Freud claimed that he had the historical evidence for the Oedipus complex. He also moved on to try and get some scientific evidence for the Oedipus complex. And for that, he used the primal horde theory by Charles Darwin. So Freud recreates or adapts Charles Darwin's primal horde theory. And according to Freud, primitive tribes did actually reflect the way that the life of apes lived together. The group, according to Freud, was controlled by one ape, the alpha male. The male ape would send all the young apes out of the group to find a partner. The chief ape, the father, would be highly respected, but the sons of the group would be jealous of him and hate him. They would want to kill him. The sons would come together and kill the chief ape, which is the father, in order to gain power and follow their sexual desires. Having killed the ape, they would feel guilty. They would spread out to other ape groups. Freud says that this is how the early tribes lived and showed the Oedipus complex even within the primal hordes. So we have had a brief look at the main points of the religious mind according to Freud, and these are the points that we looked at the beginning of the presentation. The idea that religion is an illusion, it is not a reality, it is reductive, it is created by the human mind. The religious mind is childish, is nothing more than a wish list and a comfort blanket, wanting somebody to look after us in this cruel world. It is a obsessional neurosis when you look at the rituals, and this neurosis has come from the Oedipus complex. The idea that these thoughts and memories have been repressed, which causes a neurosis, and God is a projection of the fears and the guilts of the taboo memories that we have in the head. And then we've looked at the historical evidence within Totem and Taboo, in which he tried to get evidence for the Oedipus complex within primal tribes, and we just looked at the scientific evidence that he had from the primal horde theory, saying that the way that apes lived together in groups exemplified the Oedipus complex. And here is a mark scheme for a question on Freud's view on religious belief that came from the 2018 paper. So these points may help you. I hope that this presentation has been helpful. It's been a bit rushed, but there was a lot to go through of the main parts of Freud's view of the religious mind.